Trust. That's one thing I thought we had rock solid in our marriage. But hey, life loves a good curveball, doesn't it? It was just another Thursday. Or so I thought, rummaging through drawers for my charger. Then I found her phone buzzing with notifications, not usually a big deal, right? Except this time it was. I wish I could say I didn't snoop, but those messages, they were like a car crash you can't look away from. Texts from AP, my assistant, no less. Stuff that would make a sailor blush. My gut twisted into knots. This wasn't just some flirty office banter. It was full-blown betrayal. So I confronted her. Laid it all out. Her face went ghost white, then red hot. Denial. Accusations. The whole 9 yards. I was paranoid, delusional. But the evidence was glaring right there in pixels and bytes. She kept denying though, like if she said it enough, it might come true. I wasn't going to let this slide. I needed the truth, concrete and undeniable. Enter my pie. A guy who looked like he stepped out of a noir film. He got to work, tailing, taking snaps, the whole shebang. Meanwhile, I turned our home into my personal surveillance state. Cameras hidden in the most unassuming places. Felt wrong, but what choice did I have? Days passed. A weird mix of normalcy and espionage. Then the pie hit the jackpot. Videos. Man. Not just texts, but actual irrefutable proof of her and AP together. Watching it felt like a punch to the gut, each frame a betrayal. That night, I sat in our living room, the evidence laid out on the coffee table like some twisted exhibit. The truth was right there, undeniable. My next move was clear, but man, was it going to be a doozy. Never thought I'd be the guy serving cold, hard truth with the appetizers. But here I was at our meticulously planned dinner party, where I'd unveil my wife's betrayal. Our closest friends and family, all gathered around, clueless about the storm brewing. I clinked my glass, signaling for silence. "I've got a surprise," I announced, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. The screen lit up, showing texts, emails, and the grand finale, video evidence of my wife's affair with my assistant. Gasps echoed around the room. I watched their faces, a mix of shock and disbelief. My wife's face was a canvas of horror and denial. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered, but her words fell flat in the heavy air of betrayal. I didn't bask in the drama. Instead, I moved to the next act of my plan. Filing for divorce seemed like a natural step, but it was more strategic than emotional. I cited her affair as the reason, knowing it would influence the proceedings in my favor. My lawyer was a shark, and I was ready to let him loose. But the real blow was the asset freeze. I had our accounts and assets legally frozen, leaving her financially stranded. The look on her face when she realized the extent of her predicament was something I thought would bring me satisfaction. Instead, it was a hollow victory. In a desperate attempt, she pleaded for forgiveness, promising it was a mistake. "I never meant for this to happen," she cried, tears streaming down her face. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. I was done being the understanding husband. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life. As the chapter closes, I'm left with a mix of emotions. There's a sense of justice, sure, but also a profound sense of loss. I had loved her after all. But that love was buried under layers of betrayal and deceit. The path ahead was clear, but it was a path I'd walk alone. You know, they say life's a roller coaster, but mine? It's more like a thriller movie. The kind that leaves you on the edge of your seat, heart pounding. It all started when a P, my right-hand man at work, vanished into thin air. Just like that, poof, gone. This was the guy who'd been warming my seat at home while I was out busting my chops. I should have been relieved, but his disappearance only thickened the plot. That's when the gears in my head started turning. If life wanted to play games, I was game. It was time for a little payback. A carefully orchestrated plan to teach my dear wife a lesson she wouldn't forget. The first move? A social media crusade. Nothing too dramatic. Just a few well-placed posts to give people a glimpse of her true colors. The reactions were instant. A mix of shock, outrage, and for some, a bit of "I knew it." The fallout was like a line of dominoes. First, her job. She called me, tears and all, saying she got the boot. Scandal, they called it. I almost felt a pang of something. But no, this was the bet she made. Then came the cold shoulder from friends, family, the whole entourage. She was like a pariah, and I was the puppet master, pulling the strings from behind the curtain. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it, watching her world crumble piece by piece. But there was this nagging voice in the back of my head, wondering if I'd gone too far. I shook it off. This was justice, right? Payback for all the lies, the deceit. I was the victim here, taking back control. As her world shrank, mine expanded. I was in the driver's seat, steering this narrative where I wanted it to go. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was a show, a spectacle, and I was both the director and the lead actor. A part of me wondered, when the final curtain fell, what would be left of the stage we'd both played on. If someone had told me my life would turn into a twisted game of chess, I'd have laughed. But here I was, in the thick of it. It started with my wife, desperate and penniless, her accounts frozen solid by my doing. She was scrambling for pennies, a far cry from the life of luxury she was accustomed to. Watching her struggle stirred something in me, but my resolve was firm. This was her doing, her consequences to bear. Then came the eviction notice. I owned the house, and she had no legal claim to it. The notice was just a piece of paper, but it might as well have been a dagger. It felt like the final nail in the coffin of our shared life. She pleaded, cried, but I was deft at it. This was retribution, plain and simple. That life, oh, it loves its curveballs. Just when I thought I had the upper hand, a mysterious package landed on my doorstep. Inside, evidence that turned my world upside down. AP, the man I thought was just a cheating scoundrel, was actually a pawn in a larger game. He was targeting me, not just personally but professionally, a hired gun by a rival business. It was like watching a thriller unfold. Except I was the protagonist. My wife, as it turned out, was just a means to an end, a tool in their elaborate scheme to take me down. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. She was used, manipulated, just as I had been. This revelation threw me into a tailspin. The anger and thirst for revenge I'd been nursing was now mixed with a strange cocktail of guilt and confusion. Had I been too harsh? Was this really justice, or just another layer of the game? As my wife fought tooth and nail against the eviction and the asset freeze, I found myself in a moral quagmire. Part of me wanted to let her drown in the mess she'd helped create, but another part, a part I tried to silence, wondered if I was any better than those who'd set this chain of events in motion. Her legal battles were futile, her resources a mere fraction of what she once had access to. It was a losing fight, and we both knew it, but as I watched her struggle, a new battle raged within me. A battle between the man I'd become in this saga of revenge and the man I once was, before betrayal, before vengeance, before this all-consuming game had begun. This chapter of my life, it wasn't just about settling scores anymore. It was about unearthing truths, about understanding the real enemy, and perhaps about confronting the demons within. Ever had one of those moments where everything feels like it's spinning out of control? That's where I found myself, right in the middle of my grand plan for revenge. It started off as a simple idea, a public event, the kind that would put my wife's dirty laundry out for everyone to see. I set the stage perfectly, ensuring every eye in the community would be on us. The night kicked off without a hitch. There she was, my soon-to-be ex-wife, clueless about what was about to hit her. The room was buzzing, and then I dropped the bomb. The evidence of her affair splashed across a giant screen. The gasps, the whispers, it was like music to my ears. But then things took a turn. A couple of her die-hard friends, or what she had left of them, jumped to her defense. Words were thrown, tempers flared, and before I knew it, a full-blown physical altercation erupted. It was chaos, a whirlwind of shouting and shoving, and there I was in the eye of the storm, feeling a rush I couldn't explain. But then the unexpected happened. In the midst of all this madness, my wife collapsed. Stress, isolation, the whole scandal, it was too much for her. You'd think that would have been a wake-up call for me, right? A moment to step back and rethink this vendetta. But no, I was too far gone. My heart had turned to stone. I watched as she was rushed to the hospital and I felt nothing. Just when I thought things couldn't get more twisted, enter the mysterious benefactor. Out of nowhere, someone started throwing support her way, pulling her out of the financial abyss I tossed her into. It was infuriating. Who was this person undermining my carefully laid plans? This chapter of our lives was like a game of chess with moves and countermoves, but I was starting to lose track of who was playing who. There I was, thinking I was the puppet master. But with every twist and turn, I was left wondering who really had the control. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it? Just when you think you've got it all figured out, boom, You're hit with a revelation that turns everything on its head. That's exactly what happened to me. I was deep in my quest for revenge when I decided to dig a little deeper into AP, the man who turned my life into a living soap opera. I started digging into AP's past, and let me tell you, it was like peeling back layers of an onion. Each layer revealed something more rotten than the last. Turns out, this guy was a pro at playing people, a real-life puppet master. He'd been manipulating relationships for personal gain his whole career. Knowing this added a whole new flavor to the betrayal. It wasn't just a fling, it was a calculated move. Meanwhile, my wife, in a desperate attempt to salvage whatever dignity she had left, made a public apology. It was broadcasted for all to see, a display of remorse, or so it seemed. Part of me wondered if there was any sincerity in her words, if she truly regretted the pain she caused. But by then my heart had hardened. I couldn't see past my own hurt and anger. So, I did what any self-respecting, scorned husband would do. I rejected her apology, and not just privately. I made sure everyone knew that her words meant nothing to me. This rejection, it was like the final nail in the coffin for her. I watched, almost detached, as she spiraled further down. Her life, once so full of charm and grace, was now in ruins. The vibrant woman I once knew was no more. In her place stood a broken shadow, a reminder of the damage caused by betrayal and revenge. Strange, being in this position. Part of me relished in her downfall, felt a sense of justice being served. But another part, a quieter, more reflective part, wondered if this was really victory. Watching her descent, I couldn't help but question what I'd become in this quest for retribution. Was I really the hero of this story, or had I turned into something else, something darker? Who would have thought, right? After all the chaos, the lies, the heartache, the man who started it all, my assistant AP, just waltzes back into the picture. He shows up out of the blue, oozing charm and deceit, offering my wife a deal straight out of a spy movie. The nerve of this guy, he wanted her to betray me, to hand over sensitive company information in exchange for a fat stack of cash. As I watched from a distance, I could see the conflict in her eyes. She was cornered, desperate, her life a tattered mess because of the games we'd all been playing. I could tell part of her was considering it, weighing the option of one last betrayal for a chance to escape this nightmare. But then, something unexpected happened. She said no. After everything, after the lies, the affair, the public humiliation, she drew a line. She refused to sink further, to betray me again. It was a moment of clarity, a flicker of the woman I once knew, the one I thought I'd lost forever to greed and deception. That's when AP showed his true colors. The guy wasn't just a cheat, he was dangerous. He threatened to hurt me, to take me out of the picture if she didn't comply. The stakes were suddenly higher than any of us had anticipated. And then another twist. My wife, the woman I'd vilified, the one I'd pushed to the brink, came to me with a warning. She told me everything. AP's return, his offer, his threat. It was a surreal moment, standing there listening to her, realizing that despite the venomous path our lives had taken, there was still a shred of concern, of care. It was a chapter straight out of a thriller, with betrayals, threats, and unexpected alliances. The lines between right and wrong, between revenge and justice, they were all blurred. Here we were, in the middle of a game that had spiraled out of control. A game where the only winning move was not to play. But the question remained, were we too far gone to back out now? Life's funny, One moment you're on top of the world, the next you're setting a trap for the guy who tried to ruin your life. That's where I found myself after my wife's bombshell warning about AP's comeback and his devious plans. I was burning with a mix of anger and a strange sense of gratitude. There she was, trying to save me from the mess she helped create. Irony at its finest, huh? So I hatched a plan, a real cunning one. I used the info she gave me, turned the tables on AP. It was like setting up a chessboard. Every piece moving exactly as I wanted. And man, did it work. AP walked right into the trap, thinking he was the hunter when he was actually the prey. The look on his face when the cops slapped those cuffs on him was priceless. All his schemes, his manipulations, they crumbled to dust right there. But here's the kicker, even with AP out of the picture, things between me and my wife were too far gone. There was no fairy tale ending. No tearful reconciliation. The betrayal, the lies, they were too deep, the wounds too raw. We were past the point of no return. And it didn't end there for her. With AP's arrest, all sorts of skeletons came tumbling out of the closet. She got tangled up in the legal mess, facing charges for her part in the whole debacle. It was a hard fall from grace, and I didn't lift a finger to break her fall. Then came the divorce settlement. Let's just say the prenup was a lifesaver. I walked away with everything, leaving her with nothing but memories and regrets. I know it sounds harsh, but hey, actions have consequences, right? The final blow? She ended up homeless. Yeah, you heard that right. From living in luxury to having nowhere to call home. Her life, once so full of promise and laughter, now a shadow of its former self. As I close this chapter, I can't help but wonder, was it worth it? The revenge, the satisfaction of seeing her life crumble. Did it really make up for the betrayal? I guess some questions don't have easy answers. All I know is life goes on, and so do I, in a world that's a little less bright, a little less kind. Life's a funny thing, you know? Just when you think you've got it all figured out, it throws you a curveball that knocks you off your feet. That's where I found myself, in the aftermath of it all. Rebuilding my life, focusing on my business, trying to find some semblance of normalcy in the chaos that had become my existence. The community, well, they were split right down the middle. Some looked at me as a hero, a man who stood up for himself. Others, they pitied her, the woman who lost everything. You could feel the tension, the whispers, the judgments. It was like living in a fishbowl. Every move scrutinized, every decision judged. Then came my wife's regret. It was like a floodgate had opened, apologies and pleas for forgiveness pouring out. But it was too late. The bridge was burned, the damage done. I couldn't find it in me to forgive, to forget. I was moving on, or at least trying to. But life, oh, it had other plans. Enter the plot twist. A long-lost friend of mine reappears out of the blue. And guess what? He was the mysterious benefactor helping my wife all this time. Talk about a stab in the back. Here I was thinking I knew my friends, my enemies, but the lines, they were all blurred. He believed in second chances, redemption, all that jazz. But me? I felt betrayed, tricked. It was a rift that couldn't be mended. A friendship lost in the crossfire of my vendetta. And just when I thought I'd seen it all, my wife, beaten down by life, makes one final plea. Not for love, not for reconciliation, but for survival. She was at rock bottom, and even then I couldn't bring myself to lend a hand. It was a decision that weighed on me, a reminder of the cost of revenge. This chapter of my life was a crossroads, a test of character and loyalty. What do you do when the lines between right and wrong are blurred? How do you choose between self-preservation and compassion? These were the questions that haunted me as I stood at the precipice of a new life, forever changed by the events that had unfolded. If you told me a year ago that my life would turn out like this, I would have laughed you out of the room. But here I am, staring at the ruins of everything I once held dear. It all came crashing down, starting with me slamming the door shut on my wife's final plea. There was no going back, no more chances. I was determined to close this chapter of my life, no matter the cost. My wife, left with nothing, surprised me though. She found this resilience, this will to survive despite being at rock bottom. Watching from afar, I saw her grappling with new challenges, legal battles, health issues, the whole 9 yards. It was like she was clawing her way out of a hole, determined not to let the darkness consume her. But as I sat in my tower of solitude, the winds began to shift. The community which once had my back started to turn. Whispers of my ruthlessness, my cold-hearted revenge began to spread. Friends became strangers, and strangers became critics. My reputation, once my most prized possession, was now tarnished. Then the unthinkable happened. My empire, my business, which I had sacrificed so much to protect and grow, began to crumble. It was a slow, painful process, like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. I had been so focused on my vendetta, so consumed by my need for retribution, that I had neglected the very foundation of my success. In the end, it wasn't just my wife who lost everything. I stood amidst the wreckage of my own making, realizing the heavy price of my vengeance. My once flourishing business was now a shadow of its former self. My personal life a barren wasteland of broken relationships and lost connections. As the chapter closed on this tumultuous saga, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony of it all. In my quest to punish my wife, to make her pay for her betrayal, I had lost everything. My story, which began as a quest for justice, ended as a cautionary tale about the destructive power of revenge. There was no peace, no satisfaction, Just the hollow emptiness of a man who had let his thirst for vengeance consume him.